Hey, all my Sagittarius friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your August 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I talk about Sagittarius, I'm talking about Sagittarius representing the first house and dictating the landscape of the chart. This is also applicable to Sagittarius sun and moon. And if you have 3 or more planets in Sagittarius, this video is for you as well. When I talk about a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. August starts off with sort of a continuation of some of the energies we were feeling at the end of July. And for me, in the background of the whole month is the square and a half between Jupiter and Pluto, and the growing square between Jupiter and Saturn. Right now, Jupiter is in your 7th house, and Pluto is in your 3rd house, and Saturn is in your 4th house. So what we're looking at is really sort of this idea of the interactions you have with others, the collaborations that you have with others, the interactions you have with your workmates, your teammates, and also how you feel and think about those things. Gemini very much rules our everyday activities. It rules movement. We see an expansion of movement here with Jupiter traveling through this house. We also know that Jupiter is in its detriment, which means it's in the furthest sign from its home. And yet Jupiter is a traveler, a world traveler. So here Jupiter is experiencing the balance between those big concepts that it represents and then these more detailed things that we have to deal with in our everyday lives. Jupiter is your ruling planet. So by nature, you are expansive and you are philosophical and you are diverse and you are in many ways very accepting energy. Sagittarius is a very loving energy. But here we're feeling this square and a half to Pluto. There's something underneath the surface. There's something as Pluto is transiting back into your 2nd house of money, of your personal self-worth as it relates to your upbringing. We're going to see Pluto bringing up some things that may be laying underneath the surface that have been there for so long they didn't even appear to be alive. And here I think that it's starting to brew up. And this square that we're experiencing with Jupiter and Saturn, this is the first square. It's going to get exact as we go into the middle of the month, as Jupiter continues to move forward and Saturn continues to retrograde. So there'll be some sort of review within your home sector, within how you view the nurturing in your life, how you interact with family and home. There's also a strong sense of patriotism within the 4th house. So you could feel a sense of restriction, maybe even some limitation and some responsibility and duty to the things that are happening within the home. And that might be in some ways preventing the expansion that you're looking for within your collaborations and your contractual partnerships. The 7th house also very much rules a sense of peace, a sense of harmony. And here we're not necessarily feeling that because there's some underbelly. It's as if the winds of change are blowing, but we just don't know what the change is going to be. Now we see Mars in a growing conjunction with Jupiter here. And this is going to become exact in the middle of the month, which is a very polarizing energy because for some people it may represent a real awareness, a new philosophical, brave way of thinking and moving and interacting within our everyday life. But for some people, it may just create absolute and be inflamed anger and frustration over the ideologies and the philosophies that people feel are being asserted upon them in their everyday lives. And this really isn't just about, I mean, Saturn can represent government, authority, and leadership, but this could be sort of like rings on a tree. You could be feeling this in the very tightest circles within your experience, and then in the outer, the more community and the media that you hear, the news We are going to have a Democratic National Convention in the month of August, mid-August, when all these things are quite inflamed. And I think we're going to see people really willing to fight for their beliefs and willing to stand up, and is could get very tense. So this is going to sit like the background, like that music in an elevator as we walk through this month. So that's something to be very mindful. Another thing that's gone on is at the end of July, Mercury moved into its domicile. It's also exalted in Virgo. Virgo is your 10th house of career, of public image. It's a house that's full of leadership. And here, Mercury has been having this, it was a conversation with Neptune and Pluto. Now, Mercury is stationing to go retrograde on the 4th. So it's only going to go to about 4 degrees of Virgo before it moves back into Leo. And it's going to hit the apex of this yod. And I'm going to address that a little bit more when Venus does that. We're going to go to the 4th and I'll show you how that works. But before I do that, I just want to also point out that right now we're seeing Mercury making a square over here to Mars. And so there is sort of this feeling of frustration, maybe even a feeling of frustration in how communications are being, how do I want to phrase it? How people, inflection is a lot. We can say a lot of things to people, and just through our inflection, we can infer judgment, or we can infer criticism, or we can infer acceptance. And I think that we're seeing a bit of challenge here with people and communication. So you may find even male energies in your life might feel as if they're just a bit impatient and harsh in their language. So now let's go to the 4th, where it's quite a big day because we have a new moon in Leo, and that happens at 4:13 a.m. Pacific time. And I think this is very significant because it's at this Piscean degree, which is very creative. And Leo is a very creative sign. And Leo by nature trines your first house. So Leo is going to be your 9th house of beliefs, of actually literally moving into new territories, new areas of thought, of philosophy, and even potentially planting the seeds for some business endeavors. The 9th house rules publishing, branding, marketing, writing. So you could, and business in general, commerce. So you could see yourself starting to birth something. And I think that is supported in this new moon by Jupiter. But at the same time, Jupiter is squaring Saturn. So you may feel as if your responsibilities and your duties are thwarting your ability to move forward. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. Now we see Venus here at the same time as this new moon at the apex of a yod, which is where two planets are in a sextile to one another, and then they are the focal point of another planet. And this planet, Venus, is really asking me about my self-worth, about my ability to make money, about my choices in my belief system that then lead me into my career. The 10th house of your career, Venus is about to move into that sign. And when she does, she's going to be very much thinking about making money and being of service, and also about her own particular need for balance. Virgo can very much be a very mentally stressful sign because it is of service. It does process and analysis. So as Venus moves into what is her fall, so it's not her most favorite place to be, but it is her most productive in some ways place to be. And so here we see her in this yod where the quincunx to Pluto is a blind spot, and the spirituality that Neptune has to offer is also a blind spot. So this can feel again sort of like a polarizing event, because I could want to escape and just, go to the dark side and give up, or I can persevere through. And I think that persevering is allowing myself to start to really go through the processes no matter what the outside world is showing right now, just the focus of my heart and my mind. And I'm going to say Venus being the heart and Mercury being the mind, because in a few days, Mercury's retrograde is going to go back over this point. Literally, at the end of this day, Venus will have moved into Virgo and will be at the 0 degree. So this will be a very intense feeling. There's also this square to Uranus that is creating this friction, this anxiety that could potentially be like, do I really have, can I birth something on my own? Can I make money on my own? Am I really capable of something like that? Will people listen to me? Will they buy my services? Will I be accepted? All these things could come into play. Taurus is your 6th house of work. So there's a revolution on some level happening within your 6th house energy. So that revolution could be the birthing of your individuality that then becomes of service to others. And that's evidenced more as we go later on in the month when Venus will move into Libra and be in her rulership. But before that happens, we have a few more tricks up our sleeve. So let's go to later in the day. I should say the stars have a few more tricks up their sleeve. I'm going to go to 10 p.m. And here now we see that Venus at 0 degrees is in a very, very, it's a very tense, but yet haunting energy that it feels to me, because Pluto is bubbling up something, but I don't know what that is just yet. It's not in my consciousness. And it is to me some sort of spiritual opportunity that your soul has contracted to walk through. Just a few hours ago, we saw Venus at 29 degrees. The 29th degree is not only the Leo degree, it's also a degree that reduces down to an 11, which is the master number of thought, which is what I think the focal point is, because as Mercury moves retrograde back into the 0 degree, it will, for the second time, have this energy, this focal point. How do I think? Are my thoughts serving the experiences I want, or are they inadvertently putting me into a place of worry or concern or strategizing from lack? And I think that the square to Uranus is making me feel this sort of anxiety about this wind of change that I can't put my finger on. That's the key point. And I think part of that is because we, as a planetary community, are going through so many transformational opportunities right now, and some of them feel very challenging and in some ways destructive. And yet, you can't renovate a house without the demolition. So that's where we're going. Now, this is all playing out throughout the first 2 weeks of the month. I'm going to go to the 14th, which is another very powerful period of time. I'm going to go back to 12 o'clock, and we're going to see that Mars and Jupiter have come into a conjunction exact. And we see this chart is kind of riddled with T-squares. We see that the conjunction between Jupiter and Mars, again, Gemini is your 7th house, is in a contrast to your 1st house where the moon is right now. And there's a feeling of a push-pull in some way. There could be potentially inflamed arguments or inflamed disagreements, or even disagreements about philosophical dynamics. We're pointing here at Saturn. We know Saturn rules government, Saturn rules authority, Saturn rules things that repress us, systems that can repress us, because they're just so big, and they're not always per se current to the environment. For instance, we here in the United States have systems that have been in place for decades that haven't allowed for the technological advances that we've made over the years. We see that also on the 14th, the T-square to Saturn. So Saturn is the focal point of this. And I think this could have people talking about their views of how government should run, or how businesses should run, or how some structures should run. And in addition to Saturn being the focal point of this particular T-square, we also have Saturn in an opposition here to Venus, and Venus is in a square to Jupiter and to Mars. So we've got a focal point here of beliefs and potentially feeling a sense of wanting to war over my belief system and thinking that I'm right. And I've, so this is a time when I think having an awareness also offers us an opportunity to sidestep some of these challenges so that we don't have to rub up against situations with people that we love, but we disagree with on some level. Again, I can't help but see this square and a half is playing in the background. Something is being reframed. This is the Phoenix rising is represented here with Pluto, but Pluto, in order for the Phoenix to rise, it must first come from the ashes. And that's sort of how this feels. And the yod to Mercury retrograde, this transit yod, this is, again, now Venus has moved through this point. This is Mercury's second time, and the sun will be following in no short order. So let's go now to the 19th, where we have a full moon in Aquarius. And that is happening at 11:25 a.m. And this is another very illuminating but tense energy. We can see the predominant red lines in the chart right now. We can see that Mercury is conjunct the sun, and both of these planets, while Mercury is technically combust, being so close to the sun, Mercury is used to traveling around the sun. Mercury is used to the heat. And here we have this dynamic reflected in the moon's glow. And it feels very challenging because it is making this exact square, T-square, to Uranus. And again, Uranus is in your sixth house of work, Taurus. So you could find yourself unexpectedly feeling that, some sort of revelation about, how you're going about work, how you're processing work, if it's making you happy, or you could find yourself even through a stressful moment birthing something new, because at the same time we have this square, this T-square still in place, but it's even more tense than it was a few days ago, because now Venus has moved to the 18th degree. And while Venus is in a square here to Jupiter and Mars, Jupiter is in a square to Saturn, and Saturn is in an opposition to Venus. So there's going to be challenges probably with people's ideas about money, how money's being spent, or how money has been inflated. It could have something to do with inflation. This is also right around the time of the Democratic National Convention. So it could be a big inflation, money, costs, real estate could all be a huge topic that we are all discussing and feeling quite passionate about. And sometimes passion leads people in directions that are a little challenging. On the 22nd, the sun will be at its, I'm going to go back to 12 o'clock. We'll have its moment as the apex for this yod. We see that Mercury is in a square to Uranus. So my everyday life is somehow being interrupted. I'm feeling like, I want to rebel. I want to revolutionize myself. I should have mentioned earlier that the full moon was in exactly 27 degrees. So Uranus is at 27 degrees. The sun and the moon were both. So the topic of Mercury and the mind is very much the theme going on here. So here Mercury is just about to get to its 21st degree before it's going to move direct again. This is a little bit of almost feels like I'm walking down a dark street, and I can see a little bit in the shadows, but I can't see much, and I've got to use some sort of instinct to get me through this journey versus actually trying to maneuver it like I normally would in an earthbound way. On the 28th, we'll see Mercury go direct. This happens later in the day. So I'm going to move to about 10 o'clock. And we see Mercury is now going direct. Venus is now about to enter her domicile. She is in an opposition to Neptune, and yet at the same time, Neptune and Venus are very good friends. So here, after Venus has been going through this house of Virgo, basically your house of career and public view, how people see you as a leader, you've probably been very practical in trying to make choices that seem to be good down the line, and yet the environment around you could be changing so much that you cannot rely on your five senses, but rather you will do better to rely on your connection to spirit, to listening to your soul, to listening to that inner voice. The 29th degree here reduces down to an 11. 11 is the master number of thought. And here there's a conflict because it could potentially be that Venus is very earthbound here in these last degrees, while Neptune is calling forth this more spiritual dynamic of knowing that the soul is eternal. And as the soul focuses, that the universe complies and supplies. Now, at the same time, Venus is moving towards the supergalactic center. When she gets toward 2 degrees, 22 minutes of Libra, she will be exact supergalactic center. And that point is a point where the universe gives us an opportunity to understand that we are indeed source energy, that everything that we want and desire in the earth plane is at our disposal, but yet we get to be aware to utilize the laws of the universe. And the very first one is that focused thought creates experiences, it creates dynamics. So when we focus on something that we find pleasant and joyful, and we're authentic with that, we bring in that experience. When we focus on things with faux enjoyment, but rather worry, we're trying to be positive, it doesn't work the same. And that's why in the human apparatus, we wobble when it comes to the laws of attraction, because we're like, well, I was doing everything and it didn't work. But the doing is not the key. It's the being energy, the belief, the attitude, the dynamic that you endeavor that experience. And here's where we see this revelation come to play, because we see now that Venus is making a trine over to Uranus over here in your 6th house, offering you some kind of benefit and harmonious dynamic as you're, again, aware of your thoughts. The 27th degree is the Gemini degree. And Venus is making now a trine to Pluto, as Pluto is about to move into on the 1st of September, Pluto will move back into Capricorn and start to deconstruct some of the cobwebs that are still left in the corners of our old structures that are no longer serving us. And we do see the square to Mars. And this could be sort of this feeling of Mars can be, ever so slightly assertive, and Venus is always wanting to be more gentle and more passive. So there could be a bit of a push-pull here in that respect, where Mars's thoughts are more assertive and Venus wants to take a more subtle approach. Let's go actually to the 30th. Let me click off of Venus. And here we see now she is at the galactic center. By 10 p.m. in the evening, she is literally just minutes away from an exact point, and the south node is coming into conjunction with Venus, as well as the supergalactic center. So this is really going to be very compelling for you. Libra is your house of hopes and dreams. It's where you explore the internet and the social groups and the things, in the various things and ways that people can align through the World Wide Web. It's a very futuristic house. It's filled with innovation and scientific experimentation. And it's where we look to the stars for both astrology and for space travel. So as Venus comes into this place, we end the month with a strong opportunity to see ourselves as source energy, to be mindful of our thoughts and the things that bring us pleasure as an individual. And we have an opportunity to start to put those back in process as we move into September. And Mercury re-enters not only its domicile, but its exaltation. So it's extra strong there. So that's it. It is, again, it's a very powerful month, riddled with lots of T-squares, focal points on how we show up when our beliefs are in question or our beliefs are challenged. And I think those of us standing in awareness will swim through this fairly well. We'll have an awareness of the tension, but we may not internalize the tension. And if for some reason you find it necessary to do some sort of media detox, knock yourself out, because it should get kind of, as I like to say, cookalicious as we move further and further towards the end of the year. All right, all my Sagittarius friends, thank you so much for listening. Again, my name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer. If you'd like to book an astrology reading or an intuitive reading with me, I am available. My information is below in the description. Please like, please subscribe, please share, and comment. I love to read all your comments. I try to respond with at least a little like, but I do read them all, so I appreciate that. And join me Sunday mornings live at 11 a.m. Pacific time. That's where we look at the transits for the week ahead, and we get the angels' advice for traversing those transits through the tarot card and through an angel spread. All right, my Sagittariuses, have a lovely August. I'll see you in September. Bye-bye.